Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings. But this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018. And no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. Okay, this interview with Andre Agassi was my second interview of all time. I was literally sweating at my desk doing it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to host a podcast. I had barely interviewed anybody, and I just sort of asked questions from the heart, and we had a great time, and he was very accommodating, and I just thought I would re-release it. I hope I've gotten better at being an interviewer, and even if not, I just hope you enjoy hearing from Andre Agassi, whose book Open is one of my favorites, and you should definitely read that. Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and this is Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. As a mom of 4 kids in New York City and a writer myself, I know all too well how short everyone is on time, so I'm here to help. I'm going to interview authors and writers of all types about their work, especially as it relates to parenting and family issues. Hopefully you can listen while doing 8 million other things and fall in love with these talented scribes and their fantastic books, essays, and songs like I have, plus get some tips on surviving parenthood. For more about me, you can check out my essays at zibbyowens.com. Also, this episode has been sponsored by Chloe's Fruit, the cool way to eat fruit. Just fruit, water, and a touch of organic cane sugar. I don't know about you, but my kids are obsessed with Chloe's Pops. I secretly sneak the dark chocolate Pops when they're not looking for a guilt-free delicious treat. Check them out on chloesfruit.com. I am beyond excited to be talking to Andre Agassi today. Andre Agassi really needs no introduction, but just as a refresher, Andre used to be ranked number 1 in the world in tennis and won 8 Grand Slam singles championships. Now married to Steffi Graf, Andre has 2 children and is involved in launching charter schools with the Turner-Agassi Foundation and is on the board and one of the initial investors of Square Panda, a product innovator in AI education. Plus, Andre Agassi wrote one of my favorite books of all time. It's called Open, which I'll talk about tonight.
Hi, Zibby. How are you, Andre?
Hi. Thanks so much for doing this. This is such a treat for me.
Oh, it's sweet. You appreciate all your kind words. Are you? Is this something? Tell me a little bit about your podcast, if you don't mind.
Well, I actually just started my podcast. I'm a writer, so I do a lot of writing for magazines, and I've been doing a lot of online writing, especially about parenting lately. I have 4 little kids, so that's my main focus. I was going to write a book called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, but my agent
or
said,
write books.
Yeah, exactly. But my agent said, you know what, that might be better as a podcast, and you should just write another book. And so I said, well, actually, I really want to write a book called 40 Love about tennis and falling in love and everything. So that's how this came about. And the podcast is going to feature authors and books that I've loved or articles I read that I think are amazing. And I'm hoping to sort of distill those things for the moms who might not have time to read the full thing but want a taste of it, or even just as a preview so they can go buy it themselves.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
So
okay.
that's my...
That's very, very ambitious.
I know. So we'll see. But this will certainly help. So what made you write Open, this amazing book?
It's a good question, because I never really saw myself as ever eventually writing a book. I kind of always looked at it like a glorified press conference or something when I would read other autobiographies, and then I really got to the point where I just kind of wanted to understand my own life through a literary lens. I wanted to sort of make sense of my life, if you will, for my own desire to understand it in its context. It's the life I've lived was sort of never gave me a chance to take much in, and I went about the process, I think, in a way that really was organic. I've finally read a book that I fell in love with called The Tender Bar, written by J.R. Moehringer, and it hit me that a person's story can really be a powerful tool to impact lives, and I knew I wanted to do it with him, and probably wouldn't have done it without his dedication and collaboration. And when I finally talked him into it, he moved to Vegas for 2.5 years, and we decided to do it, and then decide later if it's something we're really going to turn over or not. And it wasn't really designed in the beginning to be something I was going to hand the world, unless I truly believe people would be better off in their own lives for sharing a bit of my experiences as it ties to their journey.
Have you been pleased with the reception? You must get just raves about it. I mean, I know it's one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it. It feels like I get more proud of it as time goes on. I mean, it feels like I lived a lifetime since the book, but as it relates to words living long past us, I assure you that's the case. And that warning was given to me by my partner, a collaborator, JR, and he just said to me, listen, every word will live past us, and as a result, let's choose carefully. And anybody that has read it has only sort of, they find themselves drawn in different, parts of the journey that I think really reflect something that makes me very proud, because my goal was to sort of say, tennis was maybe the platform that I had, but we all deal with fears. We all deal with, identity. We all deal with, taking ownership of our lives. We all deal with so many of these same themes, and mine was lived so extremely and publicly that pulling the curtains back was something that I was really anxious about in one respect, but then very proud about in another.
And you mentioned at the very end of your book that part of the reason for doing it was to help your kids out and have them learn more about your journey. Is that true? Or?
Yeah, well, I definitely wrote it through their eyes, meaning they were the first filter I used in anything that eventually made the cut, because it needed to be me. One of my great fears before my children were, old enough is that somehow something may happen to me where they wouldn't know me or who I was or how I felt or what I believed or what I went through and achieved, overcame, failed at. I just my story. I wanted it to be able to read well through their eyes. I wanted it to really be true to me, for them first and foremost. That was there's no question. But then as you get into it, you realize that this is broader and has bigger implications to people's life. Even across cultures, and that's one thing I've seen to stay pretty true.
That's great. In the book, you describe the physical agony of getting up to play many times. One quote that I loved was when you said, "Hate brings me to my knees, love gets me on my feet." Can you describe these opposing forces and how you spent so much of your career sort of pushing through pain to achieve such greatness?
Yeah, you dedicate your whole life, to be an athlete, especially in the sport of tennis, and well accomplished. You're giving your whole life to it, starting from a child. So you really kind of spend a third of your life not preparing for 2/3 of your life, and much of that wear and tear, goes on your body, and between the twisting and the turning and the sprinting and the stopping and the jumping and the starting. All of it is just an ongoing abuse that you try to recover from, sometimes on a daily basis. And then when you add years upon years, and you add some physical limitations as well with the anatomy of my particular back and hips, it was just, I got to a point where I played long past when my body told me to stop, and it was getting, all too obvious, towards the end. And, I found myself sleeping multiple times on the floor, just for the sake of what I couldn't abide by in a hotel room, mattress. I found myself, just having a much harder time standing up straight after some long matches. And, I start the book with the end, which was my last, basically my last match. And the end, started with me trying to get up off the floor. It's like my eyes open, I hear the kids in the other room, and it's my body, sort of the pain brings me to my knees. It takes me to the floor, and it's the love and also craving for caffeine that gets me to my feet, because it was, it's hard. It was literally a 5-minute process to get up, so I don't do anything too startling to my body with the day's objectives.
Another quote that I love that you said was, "One thing I've learned in 29 years of playing tennis, life will throw everything but the kitchen sink in your path, and then it will throw the kitchen sink." Can you speak to what you meant by this and how you've worked your way through that as well?
Yeah, it's the sport of tennis is a eat what you kill kind of sport. You don't, if you want to survive, it's going to come at somebody else's demise, and with that sort of intensity, you have to suffer through so many personal limitations, because you just don't know what the other person's doing. When we're out there competing, it's a result of so much preparation, and the scoreboard just tells kind of one part of it, and it's kind of the judge and jury for that moment, but what you do before, what you do, after, in recoveries, what you do in all your preparation. I mean, you're always chasing this ghost, because you're thinking to yourself, well, somebody else is working harder, or somebody else is doing more. And so these little setbacks that you get along the way, whether they be physical or discouragements, and failures, you live it alone, and you live it very intensely, because you literally believe you're the only one really going through this. You don't have the objectivity to recognize that this is the reality of the life chosen. And so you constantly feel like you're getting hit with obstacles and pressures and challenges, and your whole day becomes about what you need to do to be at your best, and to make sure you get one day better, and never try to get 2 days better, because that's when you risk taking steps backwards. And so it's this ongoing 24-hour sort of negotiation with yourself that it's almost like a post-traumatic syndrome, where you suffer so much internally that nobody knows, that you kind of, it exposes itself in some odd ways. And for me, it did in a lot of my personal choices, things that I chose to escape some of the pains, the pressures, some of the decisions I made with my, with my judgments on decision making, friends I chose to be friends with, bad decision, or I'm not to criticize, the mistake of a failed marriage, but when you fail yourself, it's impossible not to fail somebody else. And so, there's just many things that when you thought it couldn't get harder, it couldn't get worse, it did.
Wow. I'm sorry. You worked through it so beautifully. I love how you weave the day-to-day of parenting throughout the book in scenes that anyone can relate to, like the kids begging for a dog and having play dates, not being able to sleep past 7:30, which, by the way, I thought was really late, which is great. And then, they don't
well,
seem...
But I did mention in the book, though, I got to sleep until 7:30 because of my wonderful wife. So
yes, that's true, and that's nice.
She made it possible.
That's always good to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, no doubt.
But so funny that there you were, right, preparing for the finals of the U.S. Open, but they're just kids, right? It's like you're just their dad. What was it like for you to be so revered and so in the public eye, and yet at home, just be the guy who runs the bathtub? I mean, I feel like Roger Federer must be going through some of this today with his 4 kids. Like, how do you manage that difference?
Yeah, it's I think everybody's wired differently. You know, I mean, I know Roger to a certain degree. He seems like as down to earth as a person as you can be. I mean, certainly he has a respect for all cultures and people, and he's a deep knowledge of history in both life and tennis. So I would imagine there's some real context that he has off the court. Other people in the public eye, you know, they might believe what they read. I don't know. For me, I relished getting away from the hat I felt like I had to wear when I was in the public eye. You know, I never felt really authentic when I was out there. I mean, I did come to terms with this being a talent of mine, but loving tennis was not who I was. I actually hated it for most of my life for a lot of reasons. And I would get out there and struggle with my purpose and reason. I found my reason finally and giving choice to other children through education. And that became my distraction from myself when I was out there. And when I had children, it actually in some kind of odd way made it a lot easier for me, because I was able to really escape it was so real and it was so who I was, that it was a relief to me to have the responsibility of being a dad and to quite honestly feel normal, and to feel like tennis just went away. A good day or a bad day just like disappeared when your kids come running down the hallway because they hear the elevator open up at the hotel, you know, and they think it might be you. It's like, you know, so it was a real asset of mine. I was really blessed to have 5 years where I could have them, you know, with me during some of those times when I think I would have felt pretty lonely not having them.
In the book, you describe not liking school and not doing well in school, something that I'm sure many kids and parents can relate to. You said, I don't seem to learn or process facts the way other kids do. I have a steel trap memory, but trouble concentrating. I need things explained twice, 3 times. How did that experience make you feel, and how do you think that experience of your own has tied into your passion for providing education now to students around the world?
Yeah, I think my lack of education has been a big inspiration to that. The biggest reason being, you know, I describe very, very particularly in the book, you know, the life I was living as a child. It was the life of a professional. It wasn't the life of a kid, you know. And so I was always getting pulled out of school on Fridays for tournaments in Southern California at the age of 7 years old, to drive down, play all weekend, drive back late Sunday, get up, go to school. And you know, I always felt behind. I never felt rested. I never felt ready for it. In our house, it was wake up, play tennis, brush your teeth, go to school, and in that order. You know, it was really the way it was. So school wasn't a priority to my father whatsoever, and so I was always kind of behind, and I was always tired, and I might even had some learning, you know, deficits, you know, and as a result, I never quite knew why I felt the way I felt, but I shunned away from it. I resented it. I felt like resenting school was loyalty to my dad, you know, and I believed tennis was what I had to do. I never had a choice. So as a result, that lack of choice eventually, as I grew up and I started to sort of grow into my own voice, I was pretty clear with how much I resented not having that choice. And, you know, I never really liked how tennis made me feel as a child. I never liked that it affected family dinners, depending how good you played that day. I never liked, you know, how it made me feel every morning when I was having to go to school. And, you know, so there's so many things early on I didn't like. I didn't like the relationship it established. Tennis seemed to put a wedge in between my siblings and my father. And so there's so many moments growing up where I just resented not having that choice and the pressure being on me to be the one to do it. And so I think when I really hit my lowest point 27 years old, I'd fallen from I was convinced that getting to number one in the world was going to be my answer, and that somehow there was going to be some fulfillment in that goal and objective. And I just remember getting to number one and literally feeling nothing, feeling like just empty. It was weird. It was like I'm number one. It was almost worse being number one because I was let in on this dirty little secret that it doesn't change a darn thing, and so I had to go through a real tailspin in my life, and I did, and I self-inflicted with choices of drugs and choices of lifestyle, and found myself in a marriage that was quickly failing, and fell to 140 in the world, and then that's when I saw on TV, after I had one of my worst losses, my coach basically told me, we're going to quit or start over. And I just remember that moment. It was such an epiphany of a moment. I mean, epiphanies don't change our life. What we do with them is really what changes our life. But my epiphany was seeing so many people out in the streets and wondering what they did, if they loved what they did, if they even chose what they did. Did they choose their life? Did they have a choice in where they were born and what was nurtured and what their strengths and weaknesses are? So I kind of started to go, you know what? Just because I didn't choose my life doesn't mean that I can't take ownership of it and I can't find my reason. So that was my epiphany, and I searched for my reason from that day forward, which led to me seeing a 60 Minutes piece on KIPP, Knowledge is Power program, which is one of the most renowned charter school operators in the country. And I saw these people changing these children's lives by rolling up their sleeves and giving them choice. I saw what it meant for a child not to really have choice. Here I was bitching about being number one in the world when other kids who don't have choice can't escape the downward spiral of their own neighborhood and gangs and prisons and drugs. And so I said, you know what, that's what I want to do. It was like overnight, I took out a $40 million mortgage and I set about the Herculean task of building my own charter school and trying to figure it out and trying to pay for it and trying to do so many things. But what it did do, it gave me my reason. And I think lack of education, seeing children who really don't have choice in their life, my own disconnect with the lack of choice in my life, I think those were probably the working components to what has made me so passionate about education.
And now you have, 65,000 school seats and 80 charter schools? It's amazing how you've expanded like that. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, that was spawned off of 15 years of building my philanthropic school in Las Vegas. I started to realize, not being an educator or an operator, I kind of said to myself, well, what am I if I'm not an educator and an operator? I realize I'm basically I've been a facilitator for these children, and I'm not in the classroom teaching. I'm not in the back of house organizing and operating, and I'm putting people in right places and trying to make the best decisions. And so one of the things that was hardest about that whole philanthropic experience was 1,200 kids in my school and 3,000 on the waiting list, and the need was so much greater. I looked at it like I was twice the failure I was a success, and I needed to figure out a way to expand this mission. And I guess sometimes when you dream when you're awake, or when you pray hard enough, or when life just sometimes puts the right people in your life at the right time. And after my book was written, my now partner had read it, and he called me and said, I share your same passion and frustration for education, and I think together we can do some really interesting things. I went down and met with him, and we ended up, through his background of inner city, development and building, we put together an out-of-the-box model that sort of said, let's not wait for government to be efficient anymore. Let's not rely on philanthropy, because we both have realized that it's not scalable. I mean, here you are with a waiting list, and let's go to the private sector and let's sell a model that doesn't ride the backs of our teachers, of our students, or anything, that we facilitate for these great operators an ability for them to scale. And so that's what we did. We put together this really interesting business model that allows us to bring capital to the table on day one, go with an operator to where they want to expand. There's obviously a need. It's not a software issue. There are plenty of great teachers inspired for a friendly learning environment, and it's a hardware issue. A charter school can't access public dollars to build their facility, but once you have your chartered license, then every child that goes to that school, the money from the state follows the child to that school. So there's a revenue model on day one in these communities where a charter is now expanding to. And so if we could bring the capital to build a facility, and then we can not play landlord in their life and allow them to fully incubate and stabilize, and then through the taxes and bond market, be able to get them a purchase power to buy back the school for a price that satisfies a like-minded investor, which is an investor that says, I'm not looking to make huge returns. I'm not looking to give away my money, or I'm tired of giving away my money. But I do want to be responsible I do want to see social impact. I want to be responsible in what I do. So if we walk the tension between return on investment versus social, scalability and sustainability, and with that model, have deployed close to $1 billion over the last 5 years and built over 80 schools. This week I go to Florida actually to open up another one. So it's really been exciting, and it's been a journey that I'm incredibly proud of, and continue to find ways to impact the lives of so many kids that don't have the luxury that other kids do. Your education should not be determined by your zip code. It's not the way it should work.
No, you're absolutely right. And I read that you're trying to develop a new measure for dyslexia that could be a universal sort of symptom check to make sure that kids get the help that they need. Can you tell me about the readability initiative you're involved in?
Yeah, so I'm involved in. I started this company with a few. I'm a very, very early investor with called Square Panda, and it's a platform that allows us to give real-time intervention to kids as it relates to early childhood reading. And so let me just back up a step from there and say that as I've seen all these schools get built, as I've spent time with all these leaders and operators and teachers and people that are in the weeds as it relates to day-to-day educational life, the same thing keeps coming up, which is the early childhood reading literacy. Like, the earlier a child reads, the earlier they can process and comprehend content, as opposed to just phonetically figuring out what the heck the word is saying. We haven't evolved to read. Reading is about seeing something, associating a sound with it, tying it with another letter, pronouncing those two together, making a word, then going to the auditor where you have to say the word, and then you say the word, and then you associate it with this meaning. There's like 6 or 8 things going on in a brain just to read. And the great news is that we have so much science and neuroscience behind this to understand these batons and how they're getting passed back and forth, and where a child struggles, because when a baton isn't lit up as much as other areas with these saltwater, like I almost call them like shower caps. They're very non-invasive. You just wear it. They get a child to interact with a game or to do something, and then you can actually predict this high percentile where the struggling points are going to come with a child, and then you can help meet them where they are and develop those muscles. So I put this in my school to test it, and I was amazed at how fast some of these kids that really struggled got caught up to speed and even went past their peers in these case studies that I was able to do at my school. So that merited my complete commitment to this expansion, because when you want to talk about scalability, if you can create a platform that is in the tech world that really allows for children to be personalized in self-directed reading and learning from ages of 2 to 7. Now you're talking about real implications, but this doesn't just have implications when it comes to reading. It has implications when it comes to red flagging dyslexia, as an example, because the earlier you detect dyslexia, I mean, you can a lot of people don't realize it. They don't know they have it till the 6th grade. By then it's costing $14,000 a year remediation. But if you can recognize these sorts of things, and by the age of 4, I mean, now you're talking about managing it, remediating it, and then not ever having to worry about it ever again in an incredibly short period of time. So the success that we're having on that end, it has learning with second language, teaching, possibilities when the brain is most, when you can mold the brain. It's like it's elastic when you're really young. I mean, the second language learning acquisition, huge implications there. So anyhow, this has been about a couple of years, and we have big business in China and the United States, and it's growing and scaling. And I believe it kind of makes what I'm doing with the schools seem pretty one-dimensional of sorts, because they're standalone schools that are affecting 1,500 kids in perpetuity, say, in each school. But this is about reaching, hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
It's amazing that you're doing that. I know for sure I'm going and getting the Square Panda starter kits for my little kids now after this, for sure. Just going back to tennis for a minute, I am married to a former tennis pro who watches the Tennis Channel religiously, and the tournaments are just back to back to back to back. And I'm wondering how you feel about sort of the insanity of the tour schedule and what it does to players' bodies these days.
Yeah, it's pretty. It does appear that way. I mean, I can honestly say that I think the sport would benefit a lot more from a more sustained off season for a couple of reasons. There's a lot to be said for the quality of a sport when you can properly recover from a season and prepare for the season. So I think the quality will raise. I also think the fans will look forward to it more, and I think you can make it work. We're pretty fragmented in the ownerships of these tournaments, and some guys, they want to be out there grinding away, because the more they play, the better chance they have for their ranking. So you're almost taking away opportunities in some respects. In other words, if you talk to the top, I don't want to speak for any player, but if you were to just generally speaking, you talk to the top 15 guys in the world, they're going to want an entirely different schedule than the guys 75 to 100 in the world, So it's kind of hard to make everybody happy, but you would love to see the sport move forward in the best interest of its own future. But these guys have short careers, and they're getting longer, of course, as we're seeing with Roger and Rafa, and I know guys are playing into the 30s now. But even if you play into your mid 30s, it's you get a window of time, and then your time's over with, and guys want their opportunity to be out there to play.
Didn't think of it like that. And how did you find coaching versus playing?
It was interesting. It's when I played, I never felt pressure at all. It was never about pressure. I felt stress to, tick every box and make sure everything, organization. I just, you don't want curves. You have your rhythms. You have your style of going about getting ready for practices, for matches. Where to spend energy, where not to, and so you manage your day and all the details that go into making your day the best it can possibly be. And that was stressful because you're constantly thinking about it. But then once you get out there, everything's in order. It's like, you just hit the gas pedal and just go and hope for the best, But coaching was the exact opposite. I never felt any stress because I didn't really have to do anything. It wasn't me executing any game plan. It was, or anything like that. But you feel a huge amount of pressure because you see some of these hopes and dreams. You see somebody who is doing, everything possible to make themselves the best they can be for that moment, and the expectation on the line. You don't, and if you say one thing, and it's wrong, or it's not it's not taking a step in the right direction. It's like you feel like, you have this little lever with this giant crane, and you touch it wrong, and boom, that crane can destroy something, or it can build something, and so you really choose wisely. You really listen more than you talk, and you try to learn more than you teach, and I think that part was different and I got to say challenging, and anything problem solving is something I find enjoyable.
Well, thank you so much for being on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This has been so interesting to chat with you. I really can't thank you enough.
Oh, I could chat with you forever. This is fun. Well, good luck with this moving forward, and I know our roads will cross one way or another. And thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you for your time. Thanks so much. Take care.
Awesome.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to tonight's episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I'm Zibby Owens. You can read more about me at zibbyowens.com. But please subscribe to my podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podbean. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.